Town meeting members, I am Peter Pingator, Chair of the Community Preservation Committee. This is the Community Preservation Committee's presentation on Article 33, Appropriate to Community Preservation Fund Supplement. As you know from the preceding Article 32, the Community Preservation Committee each year requests that town meeting appropriate Community Preservation Fund revenues to 4 reserves: Annual Reserve, Community Housing Reserve, Historic Resources Reserve, and Open Space Reserve. Article 33 is a request to appropriate the additional sum of $11,935 to each of the Community Housing Reserve and the Open Space Reserve. The total of the appropriation, $23,870, would be transferred from CPA free cash to the 2 referenced reserve accounts. The requested appropriation is in essence a bookkeeping exercise, transferring funds from one CPA account, free cash, to the 2 referenced reserve accounts. The fact that annual CPA appropriations are based on anticipated revenue, coupled with the statutory requirement under the CPA that annually at least 10% of the CPA funds be spent on actual projects or be allocated for future projects in 3 specific CPA reserves: community housing, open space, and historic resources, leads us to this requested appropriation. As you know, there are 2 sources of Community Preservation Act funds. The first is property tax surcharge receipts. The second source is the State Community Preservation Fund match. Each year at town meeting, we appropriate to the Community Preservation Reserve accounts amounts based on anticipated property tax surcharge receipts for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, following town meeting, and anticipated receipts from the State Community Preservation Fund match received in October following town meeting. For fiscal year 2020, town meeting appropriated 11% of the estimated CPA receipts for the community housing and open space reserve accounts in an effort at ensuring that the town stayed compliant with the so-called 10% mandate. At the time of these appropriations, the actual property tax surcharge and state match receipts were not known. Due to the efforts of many, the state increased its voluntary CPA surcharge revenue match in fiscal year 2020. As a result of the increased revenue, in order to meet the 10% mandate, a total of $324,006 must be appropriated to each of the subject reserve funds. Town meeting had appropriated $312,071 to each reserve account. The difference, $11,935, is the amount requested to be appropriated to each of the community housing and open space reserve accounts in order to have those reserve accounts be compliant with the mandate that at least 10% of the CPA revenues be spent on actual projects or be allocated for future projects in the 3 specific reserves of community housing, open space, and historic resources. Please note that there is no requirement to transfer additional funds to the Historic Resources Reserve. This is because the amounts allocated to this reserve account are used to pay the debt service obligations related to the historic restoration of Town Hall. The debt service payment for the historic restoration of Town Hall for fiscal year 2020 totaled $435,525. This amount exceeded the Historic Resources Reserve allocation, including the additional sum of $11,935. Therefore, no additional appropriation is due the Historic Resources Reserve. The Community Preservation Committee voted unanimously in favor of this appropriation. We ask town meeting support for warrant Article 33. Thank you for your consideration.